5-year-old fights for his MOM in court. The shocking truth of what happened next. A hushed courtroom, eyes wide with disbelief, crammed with spectators who dared not breathe. It all started with a small, timid figure rising against the stark contrast of gray suit jackets and murky ties. A 5-year-old boy, heart pounding like a drum, stood up to face the people who wanted to take his mother away from him. Shock rippled through the room. Gasps were stifled by the sudden weight of his defiance. Little Tommy's brown hair flopped over his forehead, his small fists clenched in determination. "No," he yelled, a voice like a jagged rock cutting through the silence. The judge blinked in confusion, unsure how to proceed with this child, this tiny warrior, declaring war on the adults who had been squabbling over his family. The truth was more than bizarre, it was unsettling. Tommy believed, with every fiber of his being, that he could change everything. That's what sparked everyone's curiosity. What could possess a child to stake his future on such a monumental fight? Around him, whispers spread like wildfire. "What is going on? Did you see that?" Faces turned, the shock hanging thick in the air. Tommy's grandmother sat frozen, her mouth a tight line, betraying her worry. Tension thickened. The courtroom was not just a place of law. It was a stage for an epic showdown nobody had anticipated. The whispers turned into murmurs, people leaning in closer, afraid to miss a single word of what this brave little fighter would say. And as Tommy prepared to speak again, each second felt heavy, charged with an electric mix of fear and anticipation. He looked from face to face, seeking the approval he desperately needed, the love that fueled his fight. Then, in that moment, every eye focused on him, holding their breath for what would spill from his lips next. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." As Tommy opened his mouth, a strange hush fell over the room. Yet that tension seemed to vibrate with energy, as if every single person there felt it in their bones. Suddenly, his voice rang out like a bell, strong and pulsing with emotion. "She's my MOM. You can't take her." His eyes shone with fiery determination, a spark lighting a flame that flickered in everyone's heart. It made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. What lay behind that brave facade? Fear? Desperation? Love? Outside, a thunderstorm brewed. Rolling clouds darkened the sky, mirroring the storm brewing inside the courtroom. Lightning flashed, illuminating the tension-filled air. The door creaked open, casting shadows of doubt over the proceedings. Who was coming in? And what could that mean for Tommy and his mother? The air felt charged like before a fight, vibrating with suspense, and everyone was left on the edge of their seats, hearts racing and eyes glancing toward the door. What would happen next? The door swung wide open, and the murmur turned to a gasp. A tall figure stepped through, a man dressed sharply in a charcoal suit, but his face was a mask of anger and determination. It was the last person anyone had expected to see. Richard, Tommy's estranged father. The very man who had abandoned them both in the darkest days of their lives. Rich's eyes zeroed in on Tommy, and a chill swept through the courtroom. The tension thickened, each moment stretched thin with disbelief. What was he doing here? Did he come to take Tommy away? A wave of panic washed over the spectators, each person exchanging anxious glances that mirrored dread. Tommy stood frozen for a heartbeat, confusion mixing with fear. Hadn't he been fighting for his mom? Hadn't he raised his voice as an act of courage against the very man who had disappeared? But Richard's lips curled into a sneer, and the boy felt the weight of that scorn like a physical blow. "What are you doing, kid?" Richard growled, his booming voice echoing off the courtroom walls. "You think you can save her? You're just a child. You don't know anything." Gasps erupted around the room at his brazen words. Tommy's grandmother squeezed her eyes shut, as if wishing the scene would evaporate into thin air. Was Richard there to claim custody, to throw Tommy's brave declaration into chaos? "No, I know," Tommy shouted, his voice rising, raw and desperate. "You're not taking her. She loves me." The conviction in his small voice brought back that spark of hope. The crowd was restless, the spectators torn between shock at Richard's appearance and admiration for Tommy's bravery. The judge, recovering from the initial shock, quickly regained control. "Mr. Smith, you're interrupting court proceedings. Please state your intentions." His voice was steady, but it faltered slightly, uncertain of what this new player would add to the already volatile atmosphere. Richard approached the stand, his long strides imposing. "I'm here for my son," he declared, finally glancing away from Tommy. "This whole situation is a joke. She can't raise him on her own. He needs me." The room erupted into chaos. Angry whispers filled the air, people murmuring things like, "What does he know about being a father? And he's only here to cause trouble." Tommy's heart raced. What could be more confusing than the heart of the storm swirling around his small frame? "Is that true?" The judge turned to Tommy, offering him a chance to speak. Tommy's pulse raced in his tiny ears. The weight of every pair of eyes pressed upon him. Sweat trickled down his brow. But for every nervous ounce within him, there was a wellspring of courage bubbling over. He felt like a gladiator facing an enormous challenge. "I know my mom," he finally cried, his voice ringing clearer than ever amidst the fiery voices swirling around him. "She's my home. I don't want him. I want her." He raised his little chin defiantly. The storm outside rumbled, matching the turmoil inside. What was going to happen? Richard's hissed words echoed in Tommy's mind. They'd haunt him like shadows lurking in the corners. Would the court take him seriously? And what would happen if they didn't? With bated breath, everyone waited. And suddenly, bolts of lightning crashed outside, as if the skies themselves mirrored the chaos inside. As the courtroom faded into silence once more, the judge's voice rose, ready to unleash the next verdict that felt monumental in that heavy silence. The fate of Tommy and his mother beckoned ominously forward. But one question burned fiercely. Could a child's love truly change the course of their lives? This was just the beginning. What would happen when they finally uncovered the truth behind why Richard had re-entered their lives? The room held its breath, eyes fixated on the judge. Tommy's heart pounded like a drum, each thud echoing his plea. "I want my mom." The tension was palpable, a thick blanket smothering any hint of calm. Richard's sneer was the last thing he wanted to see. It filled him with dread, and he couldn't shake it off. "Enough," the judge finally declared, cutting through the suffocating silence with authority. "This court will hear the truth." Every gaze turned toward Tommy, and even the camera flashes from the crowd went still, as if the world outside paused for this moment. "Your Honor," Richard interjected, his tone laced with mockery. "The boy is too young to understand. There's no way he can know what's best for himself." The crowd stirred restlessly, a mix of outrage and empathy weaving through them. Tommy clenched his fists, trying to draw strength from his anger. I know what my mom means to me. I don't want you," Tommy shouted, tears pricking his eyes. That despair sparked another wave of whispers. The judge, however, held his gaze steady, not dismissing the boy's anguish and bravery. Tommy's grandmother took a deep breath. She was unable to stand still, her knees trembling. "Richard," she called out, her voice cracking. "You can't just waltz back in and pretend you care. You left us." The call rang out with the weight of years of pain stitched into each syllable. Richard turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "You want to drag out my past? Let us talk about it." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "What do you think I did, huh? I made tough choices to save my own life. To save him." The room shifted, as if Richard's words had spun a thread of doubt. Tommy felt the air grow heavier, wrapping around him like a vice. Hadn't they all shared a version of that story, that he left to protect them? But he choked out, "You didn't protect us. We were alone." Even as he spoke, the weight of fear pressed harder on his little shoulders. The truth hung thick. Richard had abandoned them when they needed him most. How could he stand there, so full of bluster, trying to make it right now? The judge hesitated, grasping the tension that quivered in the air. "Do you have evidence to support your claims, Mr. Smith?" he asked, eyes narrowed in scrutiny. Tommy's heart raced. He saw Richard's facade crack, just for a moment, and in that pause, he sensed an opening. "Let us hear what these people have to say about you." "Richard," Tommy shouted, his voice breaking through another silent beat. He could feel a small swell of power as the spectators murmured in reluctant agreement. His grandmother's nod was somewhere in the distance, but it felt like a tether, pulling him back from despair as Richard prepared to respond. The door swung open again, crashing against the wall. Heads snapped toward the intrusion, and a figure rushed in. Miss Carla, Tommy's mother's best friend, well known in the community, stormed in like a gust of wind. Her hair was wild, and her expression frantic. "Your Honor," she shouted, drawing everyone's attention. "I have something important to say." Tommy's breath caught in his throat. Hope flared again. What could she possibly reveal? Could this change everything? The judge, still retaining control, motioned for quiet, his brow furrowed with curiosity. The room shifted again, anticipation hanging like the storm clouds outside, a moment teetering at the edge of revelation. The truth felt closer than ever. It could shatter everything or bind them tighter together. And as Miss Carla took a deep breath, ready to reveal whatever it was that could swing fate's balance, Tommy held onto a thread of faith, desperately wishing for a miracle. What would be uncovered? Would Richard's past haunt him further, or would he finally face the reckoning he so richly deserved? Miss Carla stood there, her wide eyes darting between the judge and Richard, like a caged animal ready to spring. The air changed, thickening with tension, crackling with the electricity of the unknown. Tommy felt a rush of energy surge through him. What could she possibly say? "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but ringing with conviction. "I know what happened on the night Tommy's mother went missing." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The judge leaned forward, visibly intrigued. "Miss Carla, this is highly irregular. Are you prepared to provide evidence?" The way he framed his question demanded more than mere words. He needed something tangible, real. Miss Carla took a deep breath, her nervousness palpable. "Yes, I have a statement from a neighbor. They saw Richard that night. They saw him near the house." The words tumbled out, and Tommy's heart raced. Could this be the key? Richard's eyes narrowed, his face twisting into a mask of anger and disbelief. "That is absurd. You expect me to believe some neighbor's whispered gossip? This is low, even for you, Carla." His voice thundered in the courtroom, but the fissures of uncertainty were obviously cracking his bravado. "Whispers that do not lie," she retorted, standing taller now. "What if I told you there's more? A woman confronted you that night. What did you say to her?" The question hung in the air like a ghost, echoing in Tommy's mind, each heartbeat magnifying his fear. He wanted to know the truth, but at what cost? The crowd buzzed. Some people murmured contemplations about missed signals, while others whispered disbelief. Tommy's breath came quick and shallow. Richard's gaze darted, looking for a way out, a way to battle this sudden storm he never saw coming. "Let us not play games," Richard snapped, then turned towards the judge. "This is nonsense. I have a right to refuse this smear campaign. This is not a circus." But as he spoke, the room pivoted. The judge slammed his gavel, a firm affirmation to silence the chaos swirling around. "Enough. I will decide the validity of this testimony. Miss Carla, you will present your evidence, and we will determine its importance to this case." Tommy felt the world tilt beneath him, a strange mix of hope and dread coursing through him. What if the truth shattered everything he thought he knew? The judge gestured for Miss Carla to take a seat. He gave her a nod of approval, urging her to continue. "Your Honor, I have also secured a police report. It mentions Richard's presence during the search efforts. But when the authorities arrived, he was nowhere to be found." The weight of suspicion pulled at Richard's expression. Fear flickered behind his eyes, but quickly masked by a feigned confidence. "That's just coincidence. I was at the bar down the street that night. Anyone could confirm that." Miss Carla shook her head. "It was more than that," she pressed on. "There were voices, fighting neighbors heard you. You were arguing with her." Shockwaves exploded through the crowd. Tommy's stomach twisted. Every revelation added another brick to the wall of Richard's guilt. "Is this true, Richard?" the judge demanded, staring straight at him. The courtroom held its collective breath once more, fingers biting nails, eyes wide. Richard opened his mouth, then closed it again, weighing words like lead. The commotion outside amplified as news crews swarmed closer, hungry for developments. The judge's gavel rang out, snapping even the spectators back into their seats as Richard's silence grew heavier. For each tick of the clock, Tommy felt his spirit waver. Would Richard finally crack under the pressure? Or would he unleash an even darker truth? One that might shatter Tommy's world permanently? As the air thickened with uncertainty, a strange flicker of movement drew Tommy's eye to the back of the room. A new figure stood just inside the doorway, waiting silently, holding a folder. It was an unfamiliar face, but the intensity in her gaze made Tommy's heart slam against his ribs. Who was she? What did she know? As the realization began to sink in, Tommy's mind raced. What other secrets were waiting to be exposed? The silence in the courtroom hung like a thick fog, every set of eyes now glued to the newcomer at the back. Tommy's heart thudded so loudly in his ears, he could barely think. He leaned forward, hoping for a glimpse of the woman holding the folder. Who was she? What did she know? The judge noticed the shift, his brow furrowing. "Can I help you, miss?" he called out, annoyance seeping into his voice. The woman stepped forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, each step echoing ominously. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back tightly, and she radiated a fierce determination. As she approached the judge, Tommy caught sight of her folder. It bulged, papers spilling out haphazardly. "I have information pertaining to the case," she stated, her voice steady and unwavering. "I believe it's critical for the court to hear." Richard's expression twisted again, this time masking an undeniable fear. He shifted in his seat, his hands clenching into fists. "Your Honor, I object," he practically shouted, desperation creeping into his tone. "This woman has no relevance here. This is a waste of time." But the judge raised a hand, silencing him. Miss Green," she replied, locking her gaze on Richard. "I was a friend of Sarah's. I witnessed the events of that night, and I have something that could change everything. The truth needs to come out." Murmurs erupted around the room again, but the judge quickly gathered the courtroom's attention. "Proceed," he commanded, as the crowd collectively leaned closer, eager for the unfolding drama. Tommy could barely breathe. A friend of his mother's? Could she have known something that would finally pull back the curtain on Richard's truth? "On the night Sarah went missing," Ms. Green began, her eyes blazing, "I was leaving a party nearby. As I walked home, I heard voices in an argument. I was close enough to make out what they were saying." The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Tommy's stomach twisted tighter. "I heard Sarah telling Richard to stay away from her. She was scared enough to confront him. I saw them through the window, just before I turned the corner." She paused, glancing at Tommy, then laser-focused on Richard. "That night, he didn't leave her alone. I saw him. I saw the fear in her eyes." Richard's jaw dropped, disbelief morphing into palpable rage. "This is preposterous. You can't prove anything," he shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of his desperation. But Ms. Green wasn't shaken. "I can prove it," she shot back, flipping through the folder until she pulled out a series of photographs. "Here, evidence from the evening she went missing." Gasps rippled through the audience again as she raised the photos high for everyone to see. People leaned forward, eager for any shred of clarity in a storm of confusion and accusation. With a shaky voice, Tommy cried out, "What do they show?" "Those pictures," Ms. Green continued, "place Richard at the scene of the argument. He was the last person seen with Sarah. I tried to tell the police before, but her voice trailed off, the sorrow evident in her tone. I was afraid for my life too. I had no idea he would go this far." The room froze as the impact of her words sank in. Breathless anticipation gripped Tommy, twisting deeper, gnawing at his insides. Richard's composure shattered. "This is a lie. All of it. Everyone knows I was at the bar. You'll never get away with this." He raised his voice, groping for control, but the confidence was gone, replaced by frantic desperation. "Whether you think so or not, the truth will prevail," Ms. Green countered calmly, locking eyes with the judge once more. Tommy could feel every heartbeat pound like thunder in his ears. Everything hinged on these moments. The revelation loomed like a storm ready to break, hanging above them all with devastating potential. As the judge accepted the photos and the courtroom buzzed with newfound energy, Tommy's heart raced with questions. Would this finally be enough to unravel Richard's web of lies? Then, amid the chaos, Tommy noticed something slipping from the folder. An envelope. A single slip of paper fluttered to the ground. Could it be another piece of the puzzle? With a racing heart, He stared intently at the envelope, swallowing hard. What if this was the final key? "Excuse me, Ms. Green," he interrupted, his voice a whisper lost in the din. "What's in that envelope?" As she turned back to him, uncertainty flickered in her eyes, and the collective breath of the courtroom held tight for whatever would come next. Could the next twist lead Tommy closer to the truth? Or would it send everything tumbling into darker depths? The room held its breath, the tension thick enough to slice. Ms. Green hesitated, her fingers shaking slightly as they brushed against the edge of the envelope that had slipped to the ground. She crouched down, her movements almost instinctual, as if her body understood the weight of what lay inside. Tommy, as she started, searching for the right words, but the sound of Richard's rage cut through the air like a knife. "Stop this charade. This woman is trying to sabotage me. Did you see her trickery?" His voice thundered, desperate and furious, throwing accusations like stones hoping to break the dam of truth forming against him. The judge banged his gavel, trying to restore order. "Enough, Mr. Green. This is not a circus. Ms. Green, please, retrieve the paper and hand it to the clerk for the court record." Tommy's palms felt clammy, a knot forming deep in his stomach. What if the envelope contained another damning piece of evidence against Richard? Or worse, what if it didn't? What if it was something that complicated the truth instead of clarifying it? Ms. Green finally picked up the envelope and stood tall again. As she handed it over, a flicker of determination crossed her face, and for the first time, Tommy felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this woman really was strong enough to pull the truth from the shadows. He wanted to believe that, but the moment she released the envelope, Richard was already on the attack. "Your Honor, I demand to know who this woman thinks she is. They can't just walk in here and disrupt proceedings with their lies." "Your Honor," another voice piped up from the back. It was the prosecutor, a man known for his no-nonsense approach. "We have a witness who has come forward bravely." "Brave?" Richard hissed, his voice dripping with disdain. "She's just a scared little girl with a big story. No one has corroborated that night." Tommy's jaw tightened. No more lies, no more dismissals. He felt the urge to shout from the depths of his soul, to say that they couldn't let that man keep his grip on the truth. But the noise swirling around him felt suffocating, overpowering. Ms. Green approached the jury box, her stance firm, her voice unwavering. "I understand this is a lot to digest, but I can assure you, every second I hesitated was filled with fear, the same fear that I saw suffocating Sarah. I knew I had to come forward. This is about finding justice for her." Tommy surged forward, his heart pounding in his chest, but the bench held him back. An indescribable heat coursed through him. "What's in the envelope?" he shouted suddenly, catching everyone's attention. "We need to know." Eyes turned back to Ms. Green. She appeared momentarily stunned by Tommy's boldness. Behind her, Richard's face darkened further, his expressions shifting rapidly, like a storm cloud brewing. Was he terrified? It felt like a crack had appeared in his facade. The judge looked intrigued yet stern. "Ms. Green," addressed the court, "what else do you have to present?" With a swift, deliberate motion, Ms. Green tore open the envelope. This is a research paper written by Sarah 2 weeks before she vanished," she said, carefully unfolding another layer, revealing handwriting filled with a tangled mix of fears and reflections. "I found it hidden in a box of her things after her disappearance. She wrote about threats she felt, and a name." Gasps erupted throughout the courtroom as everyone leaned closer, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. Tommy's breath caught in his throat. Was Richard's name in there? Would this whispering truth finally come crashing down on him? "I'm not just bringing this up for theatrics," Ms. Green continued, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. Sarah was terrified of repercussions, but she also knew exactly what was happening. Tommy was on the edge of his seat. The envelope held the key to everything, the unraveling of lies, and maybe even the redemption for love lost. "Your Honor," she said, addressing the judge directly, "I ask that we read this to the court. It's time this comes to light." As the judge nodded, readying himself, Richard lunged forward, his expression wild. "No, you can't let them read that. It will ruin everything." But it was already too late. The words that could bind Richard to his lies were about to be brought into the light. The stunned silence fell over the room, and Ms. Green began to read. Tommy's heart pounded louder. With every word, they were closer to the truth. But would it be enough to finally shatter Richard's world? And then, from the back of the room, a familiar voice shouted, "Wait. You have to stop." Tommy's heart raced again. Who would dare interrupt now? What new twist was waiting just outside the door? The courtroom erupted in confusion. Heads whipped around, eyes darting toward the source of the interruption. The voice belonged to a young boy, not more than 5 years old, who stood trembling near the double doors. His small frame seemed dwarfed by the tension filling the room, but there was fierce determination etched into his tiny features. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice cracking as he stepped forward. Fear and desperation painted his expression, a look that would rattle even the hardest hearts. Tommy's breath caught. Who was this child? What did he have to do with Sarah? The air thickened, drawing attention away from Ms. Green and Richard, whose face paled as he contemplated the new dilemma become. "Your Honor," the prosecutor blurted, the shock still lingering in his tone. "This is highly irregular, just let him speak," Tommy urged, his instincts kicking in. He could feel the ripple of concern running through the room, the energy palpable as the boy faltered before the judge. The judge considered. The room grew still, every person hanging onto the moment. "Proceed," he eventually commanded, a mix of authority and caution in his voice. The boy took small, determined steps toward the front, his eyes wide, glistening with unshed tears. "I know things," he stammered, looking around before locking his gaze on the judge. "About Sarah. I saw things. I know this is difficult, but it's important. Please tell us what you saw," the judge encouraged, leaning forward, skeptical but intrigued. "I saw her. She was with a man," the boy said, his voice shaky but resolute. "He was mad he hurt her." Gasps erupted again, this time sharper, more frantic. Tommy could hardly breathe. Richard's grasp on calm shattered. "Stop this nonsense," Richard roared, the rush of adrenaline evident in his tense form. "This child knows nothing." "He does," scoffed Tommy, his determination condensing into burning anger. "He is telling the truth." The child nodded vigorously, emboldened by the support. "I swear. I wanted to tell the police, but they wouldn't listen. They told me to be quiet." "Your Honor, this is absurd," Richard snapped, his desperate attempt to regain control unraveling. The boy shivered slightly, glancing at Richard before continuing. The man had a scar. He said he wouldn't let her go. Each word peeled back the layers of chaos surrounding Sarah's disappearance. The more the boy spoke, the more Richard's facade cracked, the realization washing over the courtroom like icy water. "What color was the car?" Tommy asked suddenly, the urgency igniting within him. 20 questions spilled from his lips, pushing Richard into a corner. "Where did they go?" The boy's brow furrowed, his small voice turning soft. "It was red, really bright. I was playing in the yard." Tommy felt like he'd stepped into a horror movie, the narrative twisting in directions he couldn't yet comprehend. What did this mean? A name? A car? A description? Could this be the lead they needed? "Stop. Enough," Richard shouted, his voice cracking with a kind of panic that looked almost pathetic before the eyes of the room. His face was a storm of emotions: guilt, anger, fury, throwing blame at the boy like wild fists. "This child is lying. He has no idea what he is talking about. He is just a kid." "It's over, Richard," Tommy seethed, the truth piercing through the murky fog that had clouded judgment for too long. "You can't run from your past. You're trapped." The tension hung thick, the air electric as everyone processed where they stood, now hurtling closer toward a precipice of revelation. As Ms. Green began to speak again, her voice cutting through the haze, Richard stepped backward, his face pale, revealing a glimpse of doubt, desperately searching for an exit. But the courtroom seemed to echo with possibilities. Could this really take a turn they had all only dreamed of? And just as the room settled into a nerve-wracking hush, the double doors burst open once more, and a voice called out, "I have more to add." What fresh chaos loomed at the edge of their unfolding drama? What hidden truths awaited the light? The voice was deep and commanding, cutting through the confusion like a knife. As the tall figure entered, the crowd shifted expectantly, eyes wide and minds racing. A man stepped forward, his demeanor strikingly contrasting with the rest of the room, calm but unervingly assertive. "Who the hell are you?" Richard spat, disbelief lacing his tone, sounding like a man cornered in an alley. The tension in his body suggested he was prepared to fight, but that bravado trembled at the edge of desperation. "Wait," Tommy whispered, squinting at this newcomer. The man's dark hair was streaked with gray, and his presence alone seemed to dim the courtroom lights a notch. There was a weight to him, an authority that felt almost palpable. "Let him speak." The man stepped closer to the boy, who was still trembling and wide-eyed, as if caught between a dream and a nightmare. "I'm here for him. I'm his father," he said, his voice steady and low. It was a claim that sent another ripple through the courtroom, disbelief mingling with curiosity among the onlookers. "What do you mean you're his father?" The judge interjected, brow furrowed with skepticism. "You were not notified of this hearing." The father's eyes narrowed, and he cast a glance toward Richard, a slight smirk dancing on his lips. "Oh, I'm aware," he replied coolly. "I've been keeping an eye on my son since things got complicated." The words hung in the air, heavy and electrifying. Gasps of disbelief erupted again. What did complicated even mean? Tommy shot a glance at the prosecutor, whose face was a mixture of confusion and intrigue, clearly weighing the implications of this unexpected development. "Enough games," Richard barked, blustering in an emotion-fueled rage. "You don't belong here." But the boy stepped forward, clutching the man's hand, his small frame giving him an unexpected sense of empowerment. "He is not lying. He knows things too." The courtroom murmured, a mix of shock and confusion lingering in the air. The boy's voice, still quavering, seemed to rise from the depths of his soul. The vulnerability combined with that unwavering conviction made the room hold its breath. "Tell me what you know," the man urged the boy, leaning down so their eyes met. "I saw the man with the scar," the little one whispered, and tightness tugged at the corners of Tommy's mouth. "He hurt Mommy, and he said he wouldn't let her go." Richard's sneer fell away, replaced by a look of horror. The father's gaze sharpened, focusing even more intently. "Then you need to tell everyone everything, son. Can you do that?" As the boy nodded solemnly, the air shifted again, tensions spinning to dizzying heights. Was this unfolding truth finally the thread they needed to unravel the tangled web surrounding Sarah's disappearance? Meanwhile, Tommy felt his heart thrumming in his chest, raw and pounding. The puzzle pieces were finally aligning, at least. That's what it felt like. Could it truly be this simple, or were they wandering deeper into a trap? The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the chaotic courtroom. "We need to hear this," he declared passionately. "This is critical. We'll require a full statement. Get the police in here immediately." "Wait," Richard screamed, panic descending like a shroud. He can't testify." "You don't understand," but the words were drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Hope surged in Tommy's chest. A level of fear began to claw at Richard's composure. What made him so terrified? Suddenly another figure appeared at the back of the courtroom, a woman with a frantic expression, lungs expanding to draw in breath. "I've got information too. You need to listen to me." The courtroom fell into stunned silence once again, as everyone turned toward her, eyes wide with apprehension. What bombshell could she drop that would alter everything they believed? Would it lead to the truth, or plunge them deeper into darkness? The woman's voice sliced through the silence like glass shattering. "You don't understand. It's not just about him. They're coming for you too." Gasps echoed through the courtroom, eyes darting from the speechless judge to the boy's father, whose expression shifted from disbelief to a hardened resolve. What could possibly be so urgent? "Who's coming for us?" Tommy asked, heart racing, adrenaline surging as he gripped the table's edge. The weight of fear pressed down on everyone in the room, a suffocating presence that left them gasping for air. I saw something," she stammered, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Before Sarah went missing. A man with a scar. I didn't realize it until now." She met Tommy's gaze, despair clouding her eyes. "He is a killer. And he isn't finished." Richard's jaw worked as he turned slowly to the woman, his body rigid. "You're lying. You've lost your mind." His reply came out strained, but he was losing ground. The truth was gnawing at him, clawing its way to the surface. The judge rose, addressing the room with authority. "Order. Enough of this chaos. Ma'am, we need details. If you've witnessed something, we can't afford to ignore it." The woman hesitated, hedging her breath as if trying to summon courage from deep within. "I was at the park," she said, eyes darting around the courtroom, searching for allies. I was just walking my dog when I saw him. He was there, watching, waiting. He said something about taking care of loose ends. I didn't know then it was about Sarah. Richard took a step closer, his voice a low snarl. You have no idea what you're talking about. This is a waste of time. The crowd buzzed with murmurs, fear and curiosity mixing uneasily, creating a tension thick enough to cut. The boy's father, caught in a whirlwind of conflict, stared at Richard as if trying to gauge the depths of his dissemblance. Tommy, the father urged, anchoring himself to the boy's trembling form. This is important. Can you remember anything else? Anything at all? The boy's brow furrowed. He seemed to shrink back into himself, but then took a deep breath. I remember, he said. Your mom is not safe. The room fell silent as a sensation of dread washed over them. Richard's face paled, and for the first time, he looked vulnerable, like a wolf cornered by hounds. Mom is not safe? Tommy echoed back, disbelief rippling through him. But what do you mean? What did he want? Tommy, focus. His father shot back, desperation flaring in his eyes. This isn't the time. The girl's outburst had roused the tension further. Your mother isn't just missing, she shouted, her voice breaking. She's in danger. All of us are. We have to tell them everything, or we'll lose her forever. A growing urgency painted the moment, an electric charge in the air. Faces were ash-gray with fear, afraid of what they had already lost, and what was yet to come. As voices began to rise again. The chaos threatened to spiral into pandemonium until the judge brought down his gavel with a thundering crack. This court will hear every word, but if anyone doesn't speak the truth, there will be consequences. Suddenly, the light flickered. A power surge about the courtroom sent an icy thrill down Tommy's spine. The shadows seemed to stretch. Whispers filled the air like an animal lurking in the dark. Tommy's heart raced. He sensed they were being watched, and as he looked toward the courtroom doors, they swung open with a violent bang. A shadowy figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, eyes glinting like knives in the dim light. Here's the question, the figure said, voice chillingly calm. What makes you think you're safe? A collective breath was held. There, in that moment, it felt as if time had frozen. The trial they had expected suddenly turned into something far darker. As Tommy stared into the eyes of the shadow, a chilling realization washed over him. Was this the end of the search, or was it merely the beginning? The courtroom's fate hinged on what would happen next. What horrendous truth lurked behind the figure's haunting words? Tommy's heart raced as he stood frozen, caught in the nightmare unfolding before him. The figure's silhouette was scary, draped in shadows, obscuring any semblance of who or what they were. Tension crackled in the air, and dread crept into the seams of the courtroom, heavy and suffocating. Who are you? The judge demanded, his voice steady but betraying a hint of anxiety. The figure took a slow step forward, revealing a face twisted with familiarity. Tommy squinted, his chest tight. The same scar, a jagged line that sliced through skin. Richard's past is far more complicated than any of you realized, the figure stated, their voice rich with tension, and it's finally come back to collect. Richard's face contorted with rage and fear, denial spilling from his lips. You're lying. You have no idea what you're talking about. But Tommy's father clenched his jaw, edging forward. What do you mean, collect? Who sent you? Suddenly, chaos erupted. Panic washed over the spectators as gasps filled the air, eyes darting nervously amongst one another. The truth was tightening its grip, relentless like a snake wrapping around its prey. I didn't just come to watch, the figure continued with chilling calm. I came for what's mine. Sarah should be known better. The courtroom buzzed with a tangle of fear and confusion, everyone grappling to make sense of this twisted reality. Richard recoiled, panic clawing at his demeanor. No, you can't do this. You can't just walk in here. Walk in? The figure echoed, laughter dark and hollow. You think you have any power? You've always been weak. And now it's time to pay. Tommy's breathing hitched. He felt lightheaded. What if his mom was in danger and they were too late? Would he lose her forever? Everyone quiet. The judge demanded again, slamming the gavel down. The murmurs slowly faded into an uneasy hush. Who are you? If you have information, you will present it here. As you wish, the figure hissed, stepping further into the light, revealing not just their face, but a badge forensic and undeniable. A detective. I've been following this case longer than any of you know. Richard, you are not the father you think you are. The room was enveloped in silence, thoughts racing like wildfire. Enough games. Richard spat, voice trembling with anger. You know nothing about me. This is all lies. But the detective remained unfazed. Documents, witnesses, every missing piece leads back to you, Richard. Sarah was terrified of you. Yes, and the threats you have made against her have kept her buried in fear. Panic laced through Tommy like thorny vines. The man he had feared now became an enemy laid bare. Do you remember the day you laid hands on her? The detective pressed on, feeling the gravity of the tension shift. The neighbors reported it. They heard sounds from inside. The fights, the chaos surrounding her life. We're closer to finding what happened than ever. Tommy felt the weight of truth settle thick with realization. Richard's face paled under the scrutiny, eyes darting like prey caught in headlights. Sweat trickled down his forehead. Don't believe them. They're manipulating you. Richard howled, but the walls had begun to close in around him. Ms. Green echoed the undeniable truth. Tommy's right. You are the reason she felt trapped. Your manipulations created her greatest fears. A fresh surge of fury bubbled inside Tommy, swelling into words he never thought he had. Tell the truth. You are hurting people in more ways than one. He shouted, as if struck by a lightning bolt. The detective turned fierce eyes toward Tommy. You're stronger than you know, kid. Your voice matters today. Richard's bravado fractured, and it became clear that the truth was unraveling before them like unraveling threads from a fabric of deceit. No. Richard faced the detective, every ounce of confidence waning. You can't take me down. I will fight this. Suddenly, more officers surged into the courtroom, voices brisk and authoritative. Richard Smith, you're under arrest for the threats, domestic violence, and the disappearance of Sarah. Smith. Gasps swept through the spectators. A next-level realization buzzed through the air, but Tommy felt new strength rising within him. As they cuffed Richard, he shouted one last desperate plea. You can't do this. I'm his father. But the crowd erupted in shouts of rebellion and triumph, hopes igniting where despair once dwelled. You're not a father if you harm. People shouted, charging the atmosphere with energy. The judge nodded to the officers, resolve hardening in his expression. Get him out of here. You will stand trial for your actions, and it will be just. And with that, as Richard was escorted out, Tommy felt the weight in his chest lift, replaced by an illuminating warmth. The courtroom inched back toward normalcy, but Tommy couldn't shake the sense of urgency still in the air. They weren't out of the woods yet. Ms. Green, the detective called, shifting focus to her. Will you follow up with the authorities? There is still a lot to unpack. Together, we can keep your friend safe and find her. I will do everything I can, she affirmed, the fight in her blooming vibrantly. Tommy breathed. The unity of unexpected allies wrapped around him like a warm embrace, and he turned toward his father. The man standing next to him was his, a beacon against the darkness threatening to swallow him whole. I'm proud of you, Tommy, the man whispered. You reached deep for that courage. We'll keep her safe. I'm here. Relief washed over Tommy, a sweet but nameless feeling, like light breaking through a storm. The worst, the darkest of this insane nightmare was finally slipping away, giving way to the truth and a chance for happiness. I want my mom back, Tommy murmured, still trembling with emotion as he imagined her smile, her warmth infinite in his heart. You will, his father replied, gripping him tightly. I promise. And with that promise, a fresh chapter began. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to show your support and feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful ending. Your support makes all the difference.